bringing to you conversations with sister CEOs, Black women who are owning businesses, who are doing business, and who are making sure that we take care of business. And so we are delighted today to have you with us. If you have never been on YouTube, please subscribe, give us a thumbs up and share it. Let other folks know that every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks, we're live with Sujay, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. So we are delighted. I am so excited to have two wonderful women with us. We're talking about the business of wellness and being well enough to do business. And so I am so excited because we're Black women who have worked with Black women in business and who take care of us. Our first guest is Dr. Marcia Harris, who is a wonderful, she's got the wellness restoration practice in New York City, and she delivered both of my children. So you'll be delighted to know that that first baby you delivered is now a doctor. So maybe it's the way you pulled him out, I'm not sure, but we're so glad that he's a doctor. And we have Dr. Jerrica Dodd, who's also joining us today, all the way from Atlanta, and we're excited to have you as well. A pharmacist by training, 22 years as an actual pharmacist, and now is continuing also to blend her ministry with medicine and making sure that we are well and doing well and having well-being. I have now combined my ministry with the ministry of wealth and wellness, because I know a big part of who we are as Black women is usually financial strains. And so I'm a third generation Black woman business owner. And so we are helping the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, which is sponsoring this along with charisma speakers, to make sure that we're taking care of our women as we're building, we're creating and connecting and collaborating. But that self-care is so important. And so I've been around both of you. I've read your works. You've been part of our works. And it's just a pleasure to know you. So I would just ask you both to open with an opening statement about why it's so important to be well. So I'm going to ask Dr. Harris, if you'll start, I know you first. If you'll just start, why is it important for Black women to be well?
Hi, Sujay. It's wonderful to be here. Hello, everyone. It's amazing because what we have to understand and realize that without our health, unless we are well, nothing else matters. Absolutely nothing else matters if we do not have our health.
Okay, and Dr. Jerrica, what about yourself? Dr. Harris, if you could just move us a little closer to your computer. Thank you so much, so we can see your full face. Thank you. Dr. Jerrica, what would you say? Why is it important to be well?
It's important for Black women to be well because we definitely are aware of the healthcare disparities in these United States between our white counterparts. And so just by nature of the color of our skin, the statistics show that we are not going to live as long and we're not going to have as good a quality of health. And so it's so important that we pay attention to that and that we become, if you will, very aggressive and assertive in making sure that we stay well.
And I'm a part of a health plan, and I won't mention which one, but I come to Dr. Harris purposely every year and out of pocket because I know that she knows a Black woman's body. And yes. I know a lot of times we get prescriptions that we have to go pick up at a pharmacist that really aren't doing well for us, and we're not feeling well when we have them. So Dr. Harris, when I first came to you, you had a regimen of vitamins, and I used to wonder, why is this doctor have all of these vitamins? Talk to us about what the importance is of having natural substances come into our body.
Well, Sujay, I did not get into vitamins from medical school. They don't teach us that stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. It actually really is sad because let's face it, nutrition is the basis of health. Mm-hmm. Nutrition is absolutely the basis of what happens in our bodies. If we don't give our bodies the right thing, then we're not going to be who we're supposed to be. And my story. I practiced allopathic medicine for 20 years before I actually got into natural, integrative, holistic health, because I was so busy taking care of everybody else, I was not taking care of me.
Yes.
And I blew my brain to the point where I ended up in a hospital in Atlanta for 10 days in a coma for the first 2, because I woke up with a blood pressure of 255 over 144 one morning.
Wow. And
In a hotel room.
Remind us what it's supposed to be in terms of blood pressure. What's the average?
Normal blood pressure is less than 120 over 80. I said less than.
Wow. And you were double that and more on both numbers.
Double that and more. I went down the tunnel twice. There is a tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being drawn towards the light. I went down the tunnel twice. Well, that was my wake-up call. And I came back to New York and said, you know, all the money in the world is not worth dying for.
Yes.
And that's when I started looking and researching for myself.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's absolutely, you know, you talk about my vitamins. As a matter of fact, I think that regimen has actually increased. Okay. I think I take more now than when you first met me, if that's at all possible.
Yeah, because, you know, it was first startling, but I'm going to come back to that because Dr. Jerrica, you were on the other side. Doctors were writing prescriptions and you had to fill them. When did the awareness come to you, like, you know, I really have to help particularly our people because I'm filling these prescriptions, but I also know that there's something more. What was your awakening?
I've spent the majority of my career in the pharmaceutical industry. And so that it was an education in and of itself of the business of medications in this country. But my own awakening, as I listened to Dr. Marcia, and we were just meeting recently, it's almost like she's telling my story and she doesn't even know it. But I too was guilty of taking care of everybody else, making sure their wants, wishes, dreams, and desires, I was helping to fulfill them. Amen. And didn't realize over a period of 13 years that symptoms and signs that my body was giving and showing that, I was going to doctors trying to find out what was wrong. But it wasn't until I landed in front of the neurosurgeon and he said, you need brain surgery, that I had my wake up moment. Because even as I was sitting there and he's telling me that, I'm saying in my head, no, but he doesn't understand all the people who are depending on me to do whatever. And so I sat there and almost was trying to bargain with him, what happens if I don't do it? And he literally matter-of-factly shrugged his shoulders and said, you'll be paralyzed. And so even that wasn't enough, and that I tried to bargain and say, well, you know what? I have some time off at work months down the road. Can we fit that in there? And he's looking at me like, has this lady lost her mind?
Wow.
But it wasn't that, and that was, you know, that was a big wake-up call. But my health had to call my number again, in that after healing from the brain surgery a couple years later, I started falling asleep while I was driving. Wow. And you know, and I know how dangerous that would be.
Oh my gosh.
And so, you know, from physicians saying, okay, well, take this prescription, that prescription, I finally said, no, I'm not going to do that, because I don't want to be on medication to stay up during the day. And I don't want to be on medication to take me down at night so that I can sleep. I was like, this is ridiculous. Wow. So I ended up saying that everything else had to take a back seat and my health came first. And I remember after making that decision, seeing the doctor a few months later, and he was like, Miss Dodd, you look great. What did I said? I left my job. I had to put me first and my health first.
I love that. And both of you are women of faith. You know, I was a parish pastor for 32 years. I'm still a minister. And I know that you are, Dr. Jerrica, as well. But, you know, even we had that myth of the superwoman, that nothing was going to ever happen to us. So I was working 14, 16 hours a day from the age of 23 when I got my first church. And, you know, just going and going. And then I burnt out. And so one of the books that I wrote was Too Blessed to Be Stressed, because I got a sabbatical year. I was really helped by the Lord to really get a year sabbatical. And I lived next to the Harvard Charles River. And as I walked around the river, he gave me that scripture, he leads me beside the still waters and restores my soul. And I had to come back a different woman, because I burnt out as a young woman. I was like, I want to have a few more years to go. Yes. So each of you is a woman of faith. And I was going to ask you, what is important about your faith in wellness, or how does wellness get integrated into your faith, or faith into your wellness? Can each of you answer that, Dr. Harris?
Absolutely. You know, you're absolutely correct. In terms of what we do, and especially as Black women, as I said, I was taking care of everybody else. Now, what happened when I had my catastrophic brain attack, as I call it, is that I made a decision, okay? I made a decision that this had to change. It had to stop. And that's when I actually asked the Lord to not only heal me, but to show me what my purpose was going forward, because it was obvious to me that my purpose on earth was not finished. Because if it had been, I would not be now talking to you.
Exactly.
You know, so yes,
Okay.
I figured that out at that point in time. And in addition to continuing my faith, as you said, I absolutely changed my life, because I literally lost 60 pounds within the next 6 months. I lost 60 pounds. I started walking 5 miles a day, 5 days a week. I started lifting weights. I started eating right. I stopped the red meat and all the junk food. I mean, up on labor and delivery at night, there would be nothing for us to order 3 or 4 boxes of pizza and everybody eat 3 or 4 slices. I mean, there was nothing, But at the time of my attack, my calcium score was 2,250. A normal calcium score is 0.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
We worry about anything over 400.
Wow.
And
So
mine was
off the chart.
Mine was 2250. And they thought they were going to have to put stents in. And I said no. Okay. So I understand you, Dr. Jerrica. I said no. And I basically said, let me change my lifestyle and see if that would work first. Yeah. And within a year, that score was down to about 600 or 800. And within 2 years, it was back to 0.
Wow. Well, thank you for that story. We're going to ask you, Dr. Jerrica, also about your faith. And I want to share with the audience, in a few minutes, we're going to be taking questions and answers from you and with our doctors and our guests. You could put the question in the chat box, and Angela Sims, who's our producer, will come to us in a few minutes and take those questions and answers. You're watching Live with Sujay, Conversations with Sister CEOs. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. Subscribe, share, or give us a thumbs up, and let us know. We'll be here for the next 4 weeks with these conversations with sister CEOs. We have developed the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, and last night we had our first new members meeting. So we go from like ages 20 all the way up to about 80 in terms of business owners or new business owners. But one of the big categories are faith entrepreneurs, or faithpreneurs, people are calling them now. People who are women of faith who are also starting businesses. So how is faith important to you, Dr. Jerrica?
Faith is important to me and has been important to me, because I don't think that without my faith, I would have been willing to step out and make some of the very difficult decisions that I made in putting myself first. Oftentimes, I think I mentioned that we are very good as humans and taking care of our neighbor and loving our neighbor, but not loving ourselves. And so I knew that when I had to make a change and say, okay, my health has to come first, that was very daunting, because it meant changing the only income source that I knew, which had, been my income for years. But to say, you know what, God, I know that you did not bring me through brain surgery and everything else you brought me through to leave me here. So I'm going to make this step and trust you. And so there have been moment by moment moments, there have been day by day days where I say, you know what, God, I can't see the way, but I trust you. And I know that it's going to work out. And so here I am, 24 months later, 25 months later,
Wow.
went from making that decision saying, no, I'm not going to make it if I keep going at this rate. And
Mhm.
so who is my provider? God is my provider. And so turning around and saying goodbye to what I needed to put on hold in order to put me first, that if I didn't have my faith, I don't know that I would have done that.
So you both make an interesting point, because it takes courage to make a decision. I mean, it's faith, but you have to have action steps in terms of that.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to walk away from something in order to now build the businesses that you have. Can you talk to us about financial freedom and when you make the decision to walk away? Sometimes in my book, Too Blessed to Be Stressed, we say knowing when to leave. And that can be a physical or an emotional, but when did you know that you needed to leave where you were? Was it the physical ailment that happened for you, or was it building up and you made that decision finally? Yeah,
For
Dr.
me,
Uh-huh.
it was my physical ailment. I was falling asleep while I was driving,
Mm.
and no one could really, I don't have narcolepsy. And I just remember thinking, and I would do all types of little things like, okay, turn the air conditioner on and turn the blower on really, really high, or get on the phone and talk to somebody while I'm driving here to there, anything I could to, but I was like, this is a Band-Aid and I need to address, I said, because if I don't watch out, if you know anything about Atlanta, I-20 is one of our highways that run, or interstates that runs east and west. I remember thinking, if I don't watch out, I'm going to kill myself and somebody else or both. And
Mm.
so I've got to make a decision. So I say that my back was proverbially against the wall because I knew I couldn't keep going on like that, though I didn't know necessarily what the answer or the path or the way was going to be.
So, Dr. Harris, you had a huge business and clientele and still do, but you were on 72nd Street, you were OBGYN, but then you made a decision to scale back. And why was that? And how did you do it?
Again, I didn't have a choice. As Dr. Jerrica just said, it was a decision as to whether I was going to take care of me or
Mm.
not.
Mhm.
And after I came back from Atlanta at that time, this was 23 years ago, when I came back from Atlanta at that time, I, as I said, changed my entire lifestyle, even to the point of kicking out the husband. I
Mm.
literally packed his stuff and put them in the hall and said, "You're the major cause of my stress. I'm sorry, but you've got to go." And
Mm.
checked him into a hotel where he was for about 3 or 4 months because he expected me at some point to say, "Come back." But it
Yes.
was not happening, you know, because I really had to choose me. I had to prioritize me
Yes.
over everybody else. That was when I stopped delivering babies.
Yes. Yes.
Now I continued with the gynecology, and the rest of it was an evolution,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the natural stuff. But I really had to make a choice at that time, because it was, if I didn't prioritize me then,
Yes.
I wouldn't be sitting here today.
And because you had to be on all the time when you're delivering babies too, they can
Oh my
call you
goodness.
at any
She's
time.
talking about falling asleep at night. I remember waking up 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "Where am I?" And I
Mm.
was going 60 miles an hour on the Harlem River Drive.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Been
I
there, done that. Got the t-shirt to prove it.
Well, I'm so glad you pulled mine out before you retired from delivering babies, because I was carrying them a long time. But we have some young business owners. We have, like I said, and we have some mature, some seasoned. We go from literally just having started in their 20s to some who are much more. What would you say at each decade of age, at each season of life, Black women, particularly who are in business, need to really be cognizant of in your 20s, in your 30s, in your 40s, because your body does change, And what are things people need to be cognizant of all the time, but particularly as you're aging and getting into those double digits plus?
Well, all the time, there are two main things. Number one is stress
Mm,
and stressors. And
mm,
always remember that it's not the what, it's the how.
Yes.
because the what's going to happen, it's how you deal with it that's going to be important. And you know, the story of the man picking up the hitchhiker with the bag over his shoulder to give him a ride, the hitchhiker jumping in the back of the truck. And when the man looks in the rear view mirror as he takes off in the pickup truck, there is the hitchhiker still with the bag over his shoulder. You know, when we give things to God, we've got to leave them with him. So that's the main thing I would say. Number one is stress, how we deal with and how we handle stress and stresses. And the second thing, I mean, talking about mind, body, and spirit, the other thing is literally knowing our, word do I use, our divinity. In other words, meditation, tuning into the divine power.
Yes.
You know, we have to each come to grips with that.
Yeah,
and once
we're femininity wrapped in divinity. So we have to make sure that we tap into that inner source, which is really important. And what would you say would be number 3? So stress factors, divinity, connecting with, however you connect with the creator. And what would be the third one?
The third one would be taking care of our bodies. Nutrition, exercise, drinking enough water, taking our vitamin D, you know, building our immune system, taking all my supplements. I think in my elderberry and my, you know, going for massages, you know, Terry at Serenity in Englewood loves me, you know, and really taking care of our bodies.
That's awesome. Dr. Jerrica, what would be your formula? A plus B plus C. What things do our young, new up and coming business women, and then those of us who are seasoned for a while, what would you say?
One of the things that I would also echo is stress. I don't think that we sometimes understand the impact that it has on us. And when you're building a new business or building your business or going in a different direction, it can definitely be an exhilarating feeling. And so you don't realize that you will be prone to just keep going and going and going and going because you're actually enjoying what you're doing. But I think that it will definitely catch up with you. And so understanding that you need boundaries in place so that you are able to say no when you need to say no, say yes when it's appropriate to say yes, because you'll find that you'll want to say yes to everything and everybody because you want to, I got to get my business out there. I want people to know. And yes, that's important. However, if you say yes to everybody, you'll be right back in some of the situations that Dr. Marcia and I have described in our own lives, and you don't want that. The second thing that I would say is that it's really important to cultivate your relationships. And so I've noticed that as I have gotten older, some of the so the closeness of relationships, they've gotten tighter, but then there have been fewer people. And so I believe that you want to cultivate the relationships that are going to support you, because everybody's not happy that you're going into business and that you're glowing and shining and taking care of yourself. So you need to really cultivate the relationships that you're supposed to have at this season in life. I used to be of the opinion that we had to be in relationship for a lifetime, and that's not always the case. So relationships, what are the relationships that you need in this season? The people who are going to be around you and give you grace to be human, the people that are around you that are going to give you that gentle nudge when you don't feel like going. So really looking at who you need to have around you, I think is very important, in addition to knowing your boundaries and when to say yes and no. And then the other thing that I would say, because I definitely, if you could see my little cup of supplements that I'm taking each morning, I'm with you. The other thing that I would say is not to buy into or believe some of the myths that I think that we have around aging.
Mm.
We're not necessarily supposed to gain weight because we age. We're not. I see people, they'll come and talk to me and say, oh, I'm good, I'm only on 2 medicines, and I'm saying, well, let's see if we can get those off. You
Yeah.
know, if it's not, don't necessarily assume that because you're aging that you have to have a medication or that you're supposed to be gaining weight, because that's not necessarily true. And understand that what we did at 20 and 30, we can't necessarily do at 40, 50, 60, and 70.
Say that, sister.
The way we eat has to change. You
Amen.
hear
Yes.
people say, I can't eat this like I used to. Well, we're probably not supposed, probably should have been eating it when we were young.
Exactly.
Now your body is really saying, hey, I can't handle that anymore. So understand and understand your own body and the way that it changes, because you are going to change. We're living beings, so
Yes.
we are going to change as time goes on, but it doesn't have to be for the worst. Like I said, aging and lots of medications, it doesn't have to be that. But also know that you know how to make that change gracefully, if you will.
Yes, yes. To your point about, some people feel like you're supposed to gain all this weight because you're aging. To that point, when my son was doing rotations and I had some of the young doctors over, they said you could always tell the Black church ladies because, they would come in and they were sick and they were big and they were eating cake and asking for cake. And I mean, all of those things. And he was like, you could always tell. And I was like, wow, that's kind of an indictment on who we are. And so I certainly pull my act together. And as a speaker, as a keynote speaker, my company is Charisma Speakers, charismaspeakers.com, also a co-sponsor of Live with Sujay. But, on the road at 20, I could grab a slice of pizza, even at 8 at night, jump into the plane, into the car, whatever, go to bed. 30s, I'd have to take a Rolaids. 40s, my body said, you staying up all night,
Right.
or you're going to throw away this pizza. And
Right.
50s and 60s, I don't even look. So you really have to be sensitive and know your body. I'm going to ask Angela Sims, our producer, if you put up the book cover, Too Blessed to Be Stressed, and also Sister to Sister. These are some books I want to commend to you, and also Balancing Your Life. If you might put those up for us at this time. And I want to commend these to you. Balancing Your Life is God's Plan and Hope for a Future. It's a workbook for Black women that with a foreword by Bishop T.D. that I did when I was on the road, actually traveling. We were doing 2 and 3 cities sometimes a week. And I had to really put it into perspective. And my analogy was like, my life was like a car. And I wanted to make sure I wasn't hitting potholes and ignoring them, nor letting my wheels not be rotated together. So we are mind, body, and spirit. The next book is Too Blessed to Be Stressed. This is Sister to Sister Devotions for and from African-American women, but Too Blessed to Be Stressed, Words of Wisdom for Women on the Move is a book that I had when I burn out. And that was the book that I wrote, is scriptural steps, holy scriptures that are steps to bouncing back from burnout or from preventing burnout. I was a young pastor, single, didn't have any boundaries, that word Dr. Jerrica just told to us about. And this was the book God gave me to write. And then Sister to Sister, Devotions for and from African-American women. 48 of the women in my life wrote their devotions in terms of how they use faith to get through life. And I'm going to just read one from one of our guests. It's called Determination and Dignity. And I got to put my glasses on because aging does change your life. So it's called Determination and Dignity. And I'm just going to pick out certain. Picture a 6-year-old girl standing over an open grave and asking to go in. Picture 2 years later, an 8-year-old child still asking her grandmother why mama had to die. Picture a 10-year-old girl ecstatic at having passed the common entrance examination in Jamaica, enabling her to go to high school and earn privilege reserved for the top 40%. Picture a 12-year-old being invested as a master guide, the highest level of Pathfinder Club. Picture a 14-year-old girl getting a standing ovation. Picture a 16-year-old starting college. Picture reality setting in, and after changing her major 4 times, going back to what she was best at in the first place: chemistry, mathematics, physics, and other sciences. Picture medical school in Washington Heights, relating to and getting to know everyone from the janitors to the dean, and learning from it and being inspired by it all. Picture her onslaught on the great white Mecca on Manhattan's East Side, the first Black woman ever to be accepted in the residency program. And picture starting her practice and being told she would not make it in New York City as a gynecologist because she didn't do abortions. This is written by Dr. Marcia Harris. And to understand the ending of her devotion, you have to get this book, Sister to Sister. But picture, so you brought us up to 72nd Street. You were told no, even though you were saying with your life, yes. You were told, no, you're not gonna make it, especially on 72nd Street on the east side of New York. What helped you to keep that yes going, even though you heard no's, Dr. Harris?
Oh, the way I was raised, who I was, and the big man upstairs. Put them together. And there is absolutely nothing that I just knew within me that whatever I wanted to do, I could do. And that has not changed, Sujay. It has not changed. It is absolutely the same. I depend on him now as much as I depended on him then. I know we've had this conversation in the operating room. I would say, okay, Lord, it's me and you. Thank you in advance, every single time.
Wow.
So,
wow. Thank you for that. Dr. Jerrica, all of us have had no's in our life. We're looking at the pandemic of George Floyd and racism in America, but we've been Black all our lives. So there've been a lot of no's. Yes. How did you keep the yes going? And what would you say to the new businesswoman who sometimes gets discouraged or she doesn't know if she's going to make it? What would you say helped you overcome? And what would you say to the young businesswoman?
I had to wake up to the dreams that God had given me. I tell women pharmacists, which is who I talk to quite a bit, that I think once we got to pharmacy school, we went through the rigor and then we graduated and then we got whatever job, that we stopped dreaming. And so one day someone says, well, I have to, pray and ask God, what he wants me to do. And I said, well, that's fine. I said, but you know what? I don't have to pray and ask him about the dreams that he's put in my heart already. And so I had to start dreaming again, because I think that I fell into a mold, if you would. This is what I'm supposed to be. This is what society thinks I'm supposed to do. And so even though we fall into that mold and we fall into that rut, if you will, and we're hearing no, because it's almost like that box is getting, smaller and smaller to box you in, but realizing that I was put on this earth for a purpose and that God has something for me to do, whether whether someone else sees it, believes it or not. It's important for me to keep in mind that I'm here for a reason. And I'm still here. I heard Dr. Marcia say, if I hadn't, then I wouldn't be here. I'm still here. So there's still purpose and reason for me to be here.
Wow. Thank you so much. We're going to take some questions from our audience, some Q&A. So if you have something, put it in that chat box, and Angela's going to come join us in a minute. But that's really powerful. I said last week we had 25 women who just became PPE distributors. So if you need some equipment, we just trained, or they're in training to be Shifa PPE, to be PPE distributors. And so I said to them, dreams do not have an expiration date. So, whenever God puts it inside of you, that means it's still dreamable, then it's still doable. So I really appreciate both of your words of advice. Angela, might you come on and share with us any questions and questions? And we have some wonderful people and doctors to answer.
Yes, we have a question from Linda Toll, who wants to know how you ladies were able to reinvent yourself. Because she mentioned that she heard you were making good money at what you were doing, right? It was profitable. But how did you know how to transition your business and what your next step in your business was going to be?
Oh, great question. Either of you.
Okay, well, I didn't, as I said, I made a decision and I did not have a choice. So what I did was, in terms of the transitioning, I went out there and found, because having practiced allopathic medicine for the previous 20 plus years, that's all I knew. So I actually had to go out there and find not just what I needed to find to make me better, but it was a matter of, if this is going to make me better, obviously, why do we wait for something to break and then try to fix it? Why do we not make it not break in the first place? So that became my goal, you know, not just for myself, but for everybody else that I take care of.
Wow, powerful. Dr. Jerrica.
I would say that, and this is something that I think all women have a challenge with, is start with deciding what you want. I sit across from the Zoom call with many women week in and week out, and I ask that question, what do you want? And oftentimes women can tell you what they don't like, what they don't want, what they're tired of. But when you ask that one question, what do you want? They're at a loss. So I would say start with deciding, you know, thinking about what are your dreams and what do you want? And then I too sought additional training in an effort to, I went and did functional medicine training because I was like, the way I was trained, it was good, but there's more to this. And if we can get to the root cause of what's going on, I think that personally we'll have fewer people using medications or what have you. So I sought the training that I need. And then in addition, I will say that when you get to be my age, you don't have forever. And so I said, I'm going to hire a coach, someone who can help me go quicker, farther, faster, so that I can build the dream that I have and help and serve more people. And so those are the things that I implemented in deciding, making that shift.
Awesome. And I want to remind you who are watching, we have just formed the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce. You can find us on globalblackwomencc.org. And we're having members who are joining that are coaches, that are consultants, that are there for you, with you, so that we all might grow together and go to our next level. So you use the word reinvention in the question. So I use these R's. I love alliteration. So I say recreation is important, and COVID is allowing us to have recreation, rest, renewal. You have been dealing with remedies. What do you think is an R that's missing from our lives? Out of all of those R's that are available, what's an R that's missing from our lives, but that's a necessity?
Restoration.
Talk about that a little bit.
Restoration. As you said at the beginning, the name of my new company,
yes,
it went from the Life Balance Center of New York to the Wellness Restoration Center,
yes,
because a lot of us need to do just that, be restored because of where we are and where we need to be. So, and whatever that means, whatever that takes, you know, whatever that means, whatever that takes, that's who we are, and that's what we need to be, restored. So I think the R that I would add here is restoration.
I love it. Dr. Jerrica, what's the R word that needs to happen?
I heard you say recreation, and that's something that I think that we don't do enough. We don't play enough. We get to be adults and we get going down our path of whatever our career is, and we are all serious. And when's the last time that you just played, that you enjoyed, and it's okay. It's not, it's, you know, it's, no one's going to think bad of you if you have some fun. We need to laugh. We talked about stress earlier. Both Dr. Marcia and I mentioned elements of stress and how that's how we end up, you know, facing those brick walls. So having recreation and being intentional about it, not like, you know, I used to be in a very bad habit where I would work the entire year, and then by December I was in tears, and I'd look back and go, oh, because I didn't take any time off the whole year. So then I'd have all this vacation time in December. Well, that was great for December, but not good for the whole year that I've gone without taking a break, without having fun and recreation. So I offer recreation as something that we
Love
need
it.
to focus on as well.
And so recreation brings me restoration. I have a pool right outside my door. And when these interviews are over, it's still warm enough just a little bit to jump in. My
Yeah.
pool guy came this morning. He said, "You want me to close it?" I was like, "No, I still have some weeks I can jump in this pool." Because that, but I also found even during COVID, we're out in Long Island. So we're able to be outside a lot, fortunately. And we have a group of bid whist players, women who are all out here by ourselves, with ourselves. And we found a way to socially distance and play some bid whist and talk a whole lot of smack, all the things we couldn't do, but it just brings us joy, and we love being together, just clean, good, clean fun, and with our families, and so it's wonderful. So we have another question, Angela?
Yes, we do. This question comes from Pam Smiles. Pam wants to know, as health professionals, how do you get your families on board? So, we know Dr. Harris mentioned sort of putting the luggage out, the stress out, but children and other people that we love that are close to us, how do you get them on board with the correct wellness lifestyle?
Well, that was difficult at first. As my children grew, first of all, initially, before my wake-up call, I really wasn't home that much. And my daughter, people would say to her, "Oh, you're gonna be a doctor like mommy and daddy?" And the head would start on the left shoulder, go up and down and up and down, and end up on the right shoulder. Are you kidding? I want to see my children. Okay. After I really did change my entire lifestyle. I really started traveling with them. That time, my daughter, who was a teenager at that time, we went to London and Paris and all over the place. What I'm doing now with my granddaughter. Okay. So what I did was I kind of morphed and made sure, Dr. Jerrica, that I took time off. And I still do that. I'm going someplace with my 11-year-old granddaughter every 3 months or so. That kid has been all over because, as she says, Grandma's not going to go somewhere fun and not take me. So it was difficult initially, but it's something which, even in terms of lifestyle, my daughter now is vegan. Okay. I was vegan for a while, then I was vegetarian, and now I even eat fish. She is still vegan.
Wow.
Okay. So and she also values, so it came across and was bought, thank heaven. She also values the fact that she needs to be healthy.
Wow. I love it. I love it. Dr. Jerrica, how do you balance family, friends? How do you make time?
I think that one of the best ways to influence our family in having that healthy lifestyle is to be the example. I can tell you that nagging does not work. No one wants to be nagged about their health because it really is an individual decision. And so while we think that we may be helping because we love and we care for family members and friends, it sounds like nagging to them if we're constantly reminding them. I have said things to family members that they have not wanted to hear, and then they have gone to the doctor and the doctor has said the same thing, and they look at me and go, "Oh." But I believe that you just have to allow those moments to happen and continue being the example, because when you're the example, and if all the stuff in the house is healthy, then eventually they have to they'll get on board, because it's, we got carrots around here. So I think just gentle reminders, you being the example, and letting them have their own journey and their own health journey, if you will, and support them as best you can without preaching and nagging.
Yeah, I actually changed or created a new profession. I became a keynote speaker. I was a pastor and a very popular one, and I was getting invitations all over. And the time that I came in, all the male pastors were getting what they call revivals. So they were doing 3, 4, 5 nights, but they had a wife at home. I couldn't do 3, 4, 5 nights, and certainly not go cross country, because you lose a day at least, and then you need the 2 days to recover. So I became a keynote speaker, and I said, I'm going to learn how to do the sacred and the secular. I can go to Atlanta in the middle of the day, drop my kids at school, do a speech in Atlanta, a keynote, get as big a check as I would get for 3 nights revival, and come back and pick them up. So I actually created a whole new profession for myself. I loved speaking. I loved being the feeling of the audience, but I also wanted to be a mom. So in their early years, thank God my mother was alive and we lived in the same complex. So she was able to help a lot. And they had a dad who loved to cook. So I had that kind of balance. As they got older, I said, I made a decision that I wanted to be a parent. And so how can I make their lives not unstable and keep them stable, but also make sure that I can bring the bread home? And that's when I changed professions. So you have to make choices. It meant that when I worked for the White House, I missed a lot of social engagements because I had a 9-month-old with me, but I made a choice to be a mom. And so you have to kind of make those choices at different stages of your life. And sometimes you have to leave it, leave someone or leave it, whatever the situation is. I think we have time for one last question. And Angela, can you share one with us?
Sure. Sharon Miles wants to know what each of you ladies would tell your 20-year-old self.
Oh, great question, Ms. Miles.
Ooh.
What would you tell your 20-year-old self? Who wants to begin? Dr. You're closer to that age than either of us. So what would you tell your 20-year-old self? I got to think about it.
I would tell my 20-year-old self not to worry so much. And that, and because I think about, at 20, I was in pharmacy school and, just in college, and I probably worried about everything that I had no control over, from what time is the sun going to come up to what time is it going to go down. And so literally I would tell myself not to worry, not to take myself so seriously. I think I used to be pretty intense. And so I wouldn't take myself so seriously and not worry.
Dr. Harris, what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
Oh, that's actually quite difficult, because there's really, with everything that's happened, there's really very little that I would change. The only thing I would tell my 20-year-old self, I think, would be that, okay, I was the biggest type A person you've ever met in your life. Dotted every I, crossed every T, if it was 10 o'clock, it was 10 o'clock, and that type of thing. And I think I probably would have changed that. That's one of the things I would say at 20, if I was going to change anything, that's one of the things I would change, because I think that ultimately led to what happened to me, my midlife crisis, So I think maybe if I had, in hindsight, not been so anal, I'm trying to figure out what word to use, I figure out in hindsight, if I had not been so anal or compulsive, that maybe life would have been different, and my midlife crisis, my catastrophic brain attack, really would not have happened to begin with. So that's kind of where I would tell my, what I tell my 20-year-old self. Now with 20, I was already in medical school. So, and I really did need to work hard and all of that. But yeah, I think that's the only thing I can think of that I would really have changed. I wouldn't have dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and I would have been easier on myself.
Okay. Well, similarly, my parents came from the deep South and they migrated north. So it was really important that their children perform well. So there was this big era of a lot of us finishing high school at 16. I was finished college at 19, similar to yours. So we were driven, but it was good drive, but I would have told my 20-year-old self, because I was finishing a master's at 20, so you were in med school, to kind of savor some of the moments. I had a lot of fun. I was always surrounded by great folks, but it was almost, can you top this? Can you get to the next achievement? Can you get, and everybody's giving you the accolades. And so you want to do better and better and better. I would probably slow it down just a little bit and savor the moments, because you can't get those back again. And you are going to grow and you're going to age. So savor some of the moments. That would be what I would say to my 20-year-old self. But I had a lot of fun. I'm telling you, I would tell my 20-year-old self, stay out of some of those places. But that's all right. This is a great.
Sujay, you know how many times I say there has to be a God? When I look back at some of the things I did and some of the things that happened, there has to be. Oh my goodness.
There has to be. And you have been hearing from two wonderful God-fearing women, God-loving women, great doctors who are talking about the business of wellness and being well enough to do business, which is so important. This is coming to you from the Global Black Women's Chamber of Commerce, a new chamber of commerce that focuses solely on Black women-owned businesses globally, all over the world. You can join us. Go to globalblackwomencc.org and you can become part of our new family. We are just about 6 months old. We were birthed in COVID. We were birthed in pain. And I think somebody knows about delivering babies. So we're just still in our gestation period, but we're coming forth and we're going to do well. So you can take a sonogram and join us and join with us. But Dr. Jerrica Dodd from Atlanta, Dr. Marcia Harris please tell us one more time the name of your business. Dr. Harris, please first.
The Wellness Restoration Center on Madison Avenue in Manhattan, New York.
And Dr. Jerrica, where can they find you?
My business is Your Pharmacy Advocate, and we're at yourpharmacyadvocate.com.
Okay, and my business is charismaspeakers.com, because you need a speaker with charisma. We provide kicking keynotes, consulting, coaching for conferences, conventions. We can do it in person, but now we can also do it virtually. You need a speaker with charisma. We want to thank Angela Sims, our producer, but most of all, we want to thank you for sharing your lunch hour with us. If you can put those books right back on the screen one more time before we say goodbye, I want to commend to you Balancing Your Life, God's Plan and Hope for a Future, Too Blessed to Be Stressed, Words of Wisdom for Women on the Move, and also Sister to Sister, Volume 1, Devotions for and from African American Women, with a contribution from Dr. Marcia Harris. It has been my joy and delight. Thank you so much for joining me, and may God bless you, and may God bless America in a real way. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.